So here I'm going to present some exciting results from our cross-country comparison of digital well-being. Before the tea break, Dr. Audrey and Dr. Netley has introduced the overall framework for our digital well-being, and we have known that there are 15 dimensions, and then in order to validate the whole questionnaire, we actually carried out the survey across 4 countries, over 4,000 responses. And then throughout this cross-country survey, we're able to, first of all, validate our survey instruments, and second, to have a general overview of the average digital well-being in 4 countries, which I'll briefly talk about. So these 4 countries are, Singapore, South Korea, China, and UK, and we picked the 4 most representative cities. Singapore, we can think of it as a city, a state. Okay, but from South Korea, we picked Seoul. In China, we picked Shanghai, and then we picked London from UK. So I think these 4 cities/states, all of them are metropolitan, and then they have the similar digital penetration rates, and then they are also comparable in many aspects, such as the demographics. So here is the sample size from all our 4-country survey. So in Singapore, we collect 1,053 responses, and from Seoul, also over 1,000. In Shanghai, we collected exactly 1,000 responses, and in London, 1,017. As you can see that there's an equal distribution of gender, and the average digital devices from these 4 cities are generally similar. So this is the breakdown of our survey sample size and the demographics. All right, so without further ado, I'll dive into the preliminary results. So just a heads up that we are still in the process of analyzing the data. So it's not the final comprehensive results, but I want to take this opportunity to share some of the most interesting high-level findings with you guys. So first of all, we find that there are significant differences in levels of digital well-being across the 4 cities, across all the 5 domains. So basically, we conducted statistical analysis such as ANOVA to compare the different levels of well-being. And then I'll dive into the specifics. All right, let's look at digital social relationships. There are significant differences in digital social relations, primarily Shanghai had the lowest level of digital social relations compared to London, Seoul, and Shanghai, and Singapore. But these 3 cities demonstrate comparable digital social relations. So meaning that there's no significant differences among these 3 places. All right, and then for digital health, there are also significant cross-country differences. And again, Shanghai scored the lowest, and Singapore scored the higher than Shanghai, but not significantly higher, but significantly lower than London. Okay, and then the only 2 cities with no significant differences were Singapore and Seoul, meaning that these 2 places are comparable in terms of digital health. So this means that Singapore, scores pretty well in terms of digital health and digital social relations so far. And now let's move on to digital consumption. Okay. So again, Shanghai is the lowest, and Seoul scored significantly lower in digital consumption than London and Singapore. But in contrast, Singapore and London, they have comparable digital consumptions. I'll just go through the rest of the 2 indicators, and then we can look at what we learned from these results. Now, digital employment, again, Shanghai scores the lowest, and Singapore, Seoul, and London has comparable digital employment levels. And finally, in terms of digital civic participation, Unsurprisingly, Shanghai scored the lowest, and Seoul scored significantly lower in digital civic participation than London, but a little higher than Singapore. And Singapore and London, they are comparable in terms of digital civic engagement. So these are the cross-country differences on these 5 dimensions of digital well-being. So across these results, we have seen that obviously there are significant differences across the countries, but Shanghai has consistently performed the worst in terms of digital well-being. So it's premature for us to offer potential explanations at this stage. But for follow-up interviews, for follow-up study, we might conduct interviews and focus groups to better understand what factors contributed to such a low digital well-being in Shanghai. But then we can see that Singapore performs generally well, and as there's no significant differences in terms of digital well-being when we compare that with Seoul and London. And then also here we suspect that there might be some factors that could influence the differences in digital well-being, such as the consumer behavior, the cultural and regulatory frameworks governing digital infrastructure and platforms. So some of these factors might influence or might help explain why Shanghai scores the lowest in digital well-being. But again, as I mentioned, this is preliminary, and we're gonna dive deeper into the reasons. Okay, and another key finding here is that demographic factors play a significant part in influencing digital well-being. The first key insight is that seniors had lower digital well-being across all 5 domains and in many countries. So we found that those aged 65 and above had significant lower levels of digital social relations, digital health, consumption, employment, and civic participation. And this means that, older adults are susceptible of lower digital well-being and the potential risks in the online spaces. And if we look at the cross-country differences, this is particularly alarming because Singapore is the only country that we find that seniors are significantly lower in terms of digital well-being. And we don't find these differences in all the other 3 countries, right? So this is a really troubling and alarming fact that we have to think about. And we need to think about why this is the case and how we can improve the digital well-being of seniors in Singapore, right? Especially consider all the scams that are going on, and that we have to think about ways to protect seniors. All right, and then we also have found gender differences in terms of digital well-being. Overall, men scored higher in digital social relations, health, consumption, and employment compared to other genders, including females, non-binary, and LGBTQ groups. And then there are also country-specific differences. For example, men in Singapore and Seoul reported higher digital employment levels, but this is not found in Shanghai. All right, so this suggests that the digital well-being are not equal across genders, right? It's important to look into the how people from different gender groups are performing, in terms of their digital literacy and how they protect themselves online. Okay, and now looking at the social economic status, again, we find the vulnerable groups, especially the lower income groups, had lower levels of digital well-being. And then, so the digital employment specifically here, digital employment was lower among the low-income individuals in London, but not in the 3 Asian countries. So this also suggests that, for policymakers and practitioners and researchers, we need to attend to low-income families groups because they have lower digital well-being across all 5 domains. In conclusion, we find that certain demographics factors are associated with digital well-being across the countries. And then certain groups, especially vulnerable groups like seniors and low-income groups and female and LGBT groups may at the risk of lower digital well-being. So it's of great importance for us to attend and focus on these vulnerable populations. And especially, again, think that Singapore is the only country that we find that seniors had significantly lower digital well-being than other groups. So this is an important message. Okay, we also find that, as I mentioned, these demographic differences, they vary across countries, right? And this may be explained by some of the sociocultural and the contextual factors across these different countries and cities. So this is a brief overview of our preliminary findings in this cross-country survey. And I want to thank our amazing partner from DQ who has helped us conducted and collected data from these 4 cities, as well as our amazing RA, Kaixin, and as well the whole group. We have been working together to get this data and analyzing the data. So we'll continue to perform a deeper analysis and digging deeper into these findings. And again, as Dr. Park mentioned during the keynote, we might conduct further focus groups and interviews at these countries and the specific cities to understand why there are differences and what the factors that drive such differences. All right, so this is from my side, and I think we can leave questions to the end. And now I'm going to pass the mic to Audrey, who will give us a conclusion.
Okay, I probably won't talk a lot. Thanks, Renwen. So I think for this project, this is one work package, and I think Madam Rahayu also gave us gave everybody like an overview of what are the other things we're doing in this project, right? Prof Renwen, collecting mobile phone data in order to look to validate. Okay, another data point in order to validate the survey. And then Prof Natalie and Prof Yipeng collecting employment data also to validate the digital employment domain. Myself right now, and together with our RA Kaixin, going through social media data on women and gender and sexual violence, comments online in try to kind of extract a large data set in order to get some thematic, trends. So those are the current work package in this particular project. We hope to wrap up this project in the next 6 months. But for this framework, right, going forward, and I think Madam Rahayu also said, so we want to socialize this framework and this instrument. We want to create a Living Well Digitally movement, okay? So we have been, we trained people from Touch, the agency. We did a training session online to about 60 to 80 people. Who else? We are going to talk to, NLB library has a public workshop. We are scheduled to do that in June, and then we will do more. We want to train our young people to become digital ambassadors in order to go out, and get all their friends to do the survey. And any agency you want us to go in and do a workshop, for your practitioners, so that your practitioners can then go out and do that. I think this particular instrument is best used not on its own, but whatever workshops you are running, whatever seminars you're doing for your constituency, to just use it as a way to open up discussion, right? So we are over the next 6 months, a whole series of outreach like that. I think maybe towards the end of the year, early next year, we might do another panel, but this time we will report from all the other work packages as well, so that then we can see a more holistic, kind of shaping of the state of digital well-being, but also a kind of showcasing of many different kinds of methodology, right? So that's kind of where we're at. Our survey right now is actually being used by our Chinese colleagues at Fudan University to collect countrywide data from China, 8 different cities. They're collecting data on digital well-being. In Europe, which
University of Oulu.
Yeah, in Europe also researchers are collecting data. Yu Yun's team also collecting data as well. So the next time I think we can also report more in depth across the global sites as well. So, but for now, right? So this is it's not a wrapping up, but Q&A. Okay, we've got the rest of the time to do Q&A. Please feel free to ask any one of us, including Kai-Sin, including Dr. Park, any questions, any elaboration. Dr. Park, I'm not sure whether you've got other things to add on plans on your side.